Hello to everyone on the internet. It is currently Monday, December 17th. I am Nathan of Washington, and you are watching The Young Globalist. And this is the news. Thousands of Belgian citizens are now revolting. The Belgian police in Brussels have been using water cannons, blast him in the face and knock him over. Which is what I'd say I'd do to that neighbor cat if it ever came around and pick another fight with my cat again, by the by. Turn on the hose and just... It's a similar principle. Otherwise using just standard riot equipment, shields, guns, batons, or shields, tasers, and batons. Against around 5,000 citizens using firecrackers and Molotov cocktails. Sounds like Antifa. Looking at you, BM fan. Modern politics and government have become corrupt. It's hard these days to find a politician who isn't. And quite frankly, a revolution or two, every now and again, is a healthy thing, provided they are not too bloody. Let's not have a repeat of the first two French revolutions. Let's have a third one, but let's keep it relatively not too terribly bloody. And if you really must kill, then maybe kill as painlessly as possible. If you really must. Bottom line is the UN, the ever-divisive UN Migration Pact was the cause and the final motivation for the riots. Of course. Of course. That thing's always at the center of all these things. They pretty much brought this upon themselves. Perhaps the end of modern civilization is farther ahead than I thought. Might even put it off altogether if we can overthrow our various governments. There may be some glint of hope in certain parts of the world, like Denmark, or here in the good old US of A. But elsewhere, I think the corruption just needs to be rooted out entirely. Like in France and Germany. And in Belgium. Bring them down, and then rebuild from the ashes. That's what you folks should do. Pope Francis says that safe immigration is more important than national security. Would you like to see the Pope at the end of a rope? Do you think he's a fool? To quote Black Sabbath? Yes, I think I would like to see the Pope at the end of a rope. I do think he's a fool. Because Pope Francis is not in charge of any countries. He's the world's lowliest politician. He's unimportant. He only matters to Catholicism. So I think it takes a certain measure of arrogance for him to think that he can just so freely comment on the issues of larger scale politics and other countries that he's not even a part of. Bottom line is, Francis is a clear globalist. And there isn't a globalist alive who's a competent politician. Besides, he's in charge of the Catholic Church. A church that creates a seemingly endless supply of pedo-priests, terrible memes, and is in fact a monstrous hybrid of Christianity and paganism. So, bottom line is, the Catholic Church is a monstrosity, and I don't fucking care what the Pope has to say. He's a fool. He's the biggest fool on earth. If he thinks he can talk about larger scale politics like he knows what he's saying, when he can't even manage his own fucking religion properly. Shut the hell up, Francis. We don't need to listen to you. Nor will we. Macron calls for return to order in France. Basically tells the Yellowists to cut it out. But of course, they won't. They've had enough. They'll just keep rioting until they'll just keep protesting until they get their demands met, or until the French government is disbarred, is disillusioned, broken up. Break up the government. Hell, his own army declared him a traitor, accused him of treason. Did the whole ritual where they point the French flagpole at him and listed off the generals accusing him and what the accusations were. Nope. The only way they're going to get a return to order is if that current French government is taken apart and replaced with a new one. That's what they need to do at this point. It's a model of absolute corruption. Now I'm going to read you this article about how Obama has made the U.S. a #1 destination for sex trafficking. Yes, U.S. became world #1 for sex trafficking and pedophilia under Obama. The United States became the world's largest destination for child sex trafficking and pedophilia during Barack Obama's second term in office, as the former president and his administration led America in a downward spiral into a moral abyss that the nation is only just beginning to recover from. Barack Obama failed the nation in innumerable ways while he was president. Perhaps it is the nation's most vulnerable members, the children, who are most let down by the Obama administration. Many Americans hold to a national pride that believes the United States is, or at least was, the greatest country in the world. Few would argue that America is not what it used to be, especially considering the backsliding that occurred under the Obama presidency. Current President Donald Trump was swept into power because he ran on a campaign slogan to make America great again, tapping into the powerful belief held by the silent majority of Americans that what was once considered great in America suffered badly during the era of Obama, Hillary Clinton, and their cronies. Today, depending on how one measures greatness, America can most be considered greater than other countries in certain aspects, such as having the world's largest economy or the world's most powerful military force. But there is one area where America exceeds all other nations of the world that hopefully most Americans would not be proud to admit. America is the #1 destination for pedophilia and child sex trafficking, and this huge market exists mainly because it is funded by taxpayers through the U.S. government, child protection services, and foster care system. CPS and the foster care system. It's quite the claim. Let's examine that. The problem of child sex trafficking in the U.S. is real and documented. It's true. I've looked at the sources. It's a pretty solid case. Medical Kidnap report in 2016, Senator Rob Portman published a 6-month investigation looking at 125,000 unaccompanied minors who had crossed the United States borders into the United States since 2011, reportedly fleeing violence and unrest in Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. This U.S. Senate report concluded that the Office of Refugee Resettlement, an agency of the Department of Health and Human Services, or HHS, had failed to protect these children from human trafficking, leaving them vulnerable to abuses at the hands of government-approved caretakers. U.S. law requires HHS to ensure that unaccompanied alien children, or UAC, are protected from human trafficking and other forms of abuse. But Senator Portman's report made it clear that this was not happening, that the U.S. had become a popular destination for child sex trafficking, increasing dramatically since 2014 and the Obama administration. Since 2014, the United States has experienced a large increase of unaccompanied alien children from Central America at the southern border. The number of UACs apprehended increased from approximately 8,000 in fiscal year FY 2008 to almost 69,000 in FY 2014, and 39,970 in fiscal year 2015. The causes of the surge of the UACs are disputed, but all stakeholders, including HHS, agree that one reason UACs come to this country is that they are brought into the United States by human trafficking rings. Well, hey, I mean, organizations right in the thick of it. They're saying it's happening. It must be happening. According to the State Department's 2015 Trafficking in Persons report, the United States is a source, transit, and destination country for men, women, transgender individuals, and children, both U.S. citizens and foreign nationals subjected to sex trafficking and forced labor. There's been a lot of criticism in recent weeks about children allegedly being separated from their families when coming across the border. However, Senator Portman's 2016 report clearly shows that most of these children coming across the border are unaccompanied and being trafficked, with the vast majority of them not accompanied by family members. The report shows that even some of those released to family members end up being trafficked. Well, yeah, I mean, under Obama, a dude could just claim that, oh, that's my kid, and they wouldn't even ask for proof under catch and release. HHS's process for verifying the alleged relationship between a UAC and an individual other than a parent, guardian, or close family member is unreliable and vulnerable to abuse. In general, HHS accepts the alleged relationship between a Category 3 sponsor and a UAC, e.g., neighbor from home country, if a person claiming to be the child's family member corroborates it. No ID, no DNA test. In a number of cases, however, parents who consented to the placement of their children with certain sponsors were also complicit in the child's smuggling. See, sometimes even the parents. In the Marion cases, for example, several victims' family members attested to the asserted relationship, but there was a reason. The human traffickers held the deeds to some of the family's homes as collateral for the child's journey to the United States. The sooner the child was released from HHS custody, the sooner they could begin working to repay the debt. Other cases reveal that parents had deceived HHS by claiming that a relationship existed between the sponsor and the UAC when it did not. Child Protection Services pipeline to child sex trafficking through foster care. As informative as Senator Portman's 2016 congressional report was, revealing how the U.S. is a top destination for child trafficking, to understand the full scope of the problem today, we need to look at the main problem within our borders that allows the pedophilia market to exist. Sadly, when children are rescued from these sex trafficking cartels, the children are almost always put into a government-run system that itself is the source of most child sex trafficking within the U.S. Child Protection Services and the foster care system. In one of the first public interviews revealing the depth of the problem of child sex trafficking within the government, Child Social Services Program's Tammy Stefano of the National Safe Child Show was interviewed by film producer Sean Stone, where she stated that the child and human trafficking business currently operating in the United States brings in more money than the illegal drug trade and illegal arms trade combined. Stefano was also one of the first to publicly expose that known child abusers were routinely being approved as foster parents, which allows child sex trafficking to continue in the United States. She reported how the Los Angeles Times published an article exposing how 1,000 convicted sex offenders had been given a green light by CPS to become approved foster parents, just in Los Angeles County. Today, in 2018, more of this practice of approving sex offenders and pedophiles to become foster parents to meet the demands of the lucrative child sex trafficking business is coming to light. Earlier this year, attorney Michael Dulce from the law firm Cohen-Milstein wrote an opinion piece published by Newsweek stating that the nation's foster care system is set up to sexually traffic children. Dulce, who speaks from experience from representing children abused in foster care, stated, "Here's the ugly truth. Most Americans who are victims of sex trafficking came from our nation's own foster care system. It's a deeply broken system that leaves thousands vulnerable to pimps as children and grooms them for the illegal sex trade as young adults. We have failed our children by not fixing the systemic failures that have allowed this to happen for decades." And there are sources cited, in case you're wondering. Even local news stations are beginning to cover this topic, as a local news station in Boston recently reported, "Sex traffickers are selling foster kids on the weekends. 25 investigates has uncovered." Investigative reporter Eric Rasmussen found cases of kids in foster care pimped out on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then returned to their taxpayer-funded group homes on Monday. Records obtained by 25 Investigates reveal a female staff member working with foster kids at the Elliott Atlantic House in Saugus is suspected of convincing a then 16-year-old girl at the group home to sell herself for sex on the weekends. In other words, she was working as a madam, the staff member. That staff member told the foster child she had a way they could make money together, according to the report obtained by 25 Investigates. The girl told investigators the staff member took her to Worcester 3 times, and once to Boston to have sex with unknown men for money on the weekends. Boston 25 spent a year investigating this issue, and they found that the problem of foster care children gone missing and pimped into child sex trafficking rings happens throughout the U.S. and not just in Boston. Last year, in 2017, Medina County, Texas Sheriff Randy Brown publicly criticized the Texas Child Protection Services after he arrested a 58-year-old man for sexually abusing 5 former foster care children. The man, Miguel Breseno, had at various times taken care of up to 12 girls at one time, and a total of 180 girls had passed through his care, according to reported by San Antonio Express News. It's not a question about whether there are more, it's just about how many. Those girls were taken from some environment, and then you have some jackass like him abusing these girls that already have troubles, Brown said. I'm aggravated at the whole system. I'm aggravated at the company that placed these girls. It was a money-making deal. The way they were running those girls through there like livestock. It wasn't about making a better world for them. They were making a profit off them. Also, Brown, Texas, like many states, has an ongoing federal lawsuit against them for allowing foster children to be abused and sexually trafficked. U.S. District Judge Yanis Graham, Jack, ruled against the state of Texas in December 2015, stating that the foster care system named in the lawsuit was unconstitutional. And in her 255-page ruling, Judge Jack stated, Texas PMC, Permanent Managing Conservatorship, children have been shuttled through a system where rape, abuse, psychotropic medication, instability are the norm. The Texas Tribune ran a series of articles in 2017 highlighting the problem of child sex trafficking in Texas. 86% of runaway children in the United States suspected of being forced into sex work came from the child welfare system, according to a 2016 analysis of cases reported to the National Center on Missing and Exploited Children. Of the 79,000 child sex trafficking victims estimated to be in the state, the vast majority were in foster care or had previous contact with Child Protective Services, according to a recent University of Texas study. Oh God, I wish you could see the picture of this Arizona foster parent. This dude's fat. Wow. In 2017, Health Impact News was able to publish the case of David Frodsham in the military town of Sierra Vista, Arizona, where he was arrested and convicted for running a child pornography pedophile ring out of his state-approved foster home in June of 2017. David Frodsham is a former commander with the Department of Defense in Afghanistan. He was discharged from duty due to sexual harassment behavior and an assessment by the military that he had an unalterable personality disorder, and yet he was approved by the state of Arizona to run a foster care home, where he allegedly routinely abused and raped children in a pedophilia ring. In 2017, David Frodsham was arrested for the abuse of the young child Devani, who was seized from her family just days before her 2nd birthday and placed into the Frodsham state-approved foster home, where she was allegedly raped repeatedly and trafficked as part of an organized pornographic pedophile ring. After David Frodsham was arrested due to a federal investigation, Devani was placed into another state-approved foster home, where 80% of her body was burned by scalding water, forcing the amputation of her toes. Another foster child who was adopted by the Frodshams and put into their pornographic pedophile ring turned 18 and came forward to reveal details of years of horrible torture and sexual trafficking while suing the state of Arizona for damages of $15 million. Should have made it more. These horrible stories that we have exposed here are really just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to child sex trafficking through CPS and the foster care system. Recently, Health Impact News covered the story of Jennifer Guskin, who was adopted as a baby herself, and has recently gone public with horrific details about her childhood and how she became a victim of child sex trafficking and experimentation. Not long before Child Protective Services and the police showed up on her doorstep to take away her own infant child, Jennifer Guskin released the first two in a set of YouTube videos in which she had begun to talk about some of what she went through growing up in foster care, and as part of a nationwide pedophile sex trafficking operation. The videos describe allegations of unimaginable horrors of child sex trafficking experimentation and a pedophilia network that allegedly reaches to highest levels of government and society. Warning: graphic content about topics such as cannibalism, child sex, torture, murder, and etc. not suitable for children. Make sure your little ones are not in the room. They're on YouTube on her channel, A Human Experiment. These videos reveal a dark underbelly of corruption and evil on a level that most of us cannot fathom. They are things that should never happen to another human being, let alone small children and babies. America's downward spiral into a moral abyss. Does anyone care? There is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed or hidden, that will not be made known. What you have said in the dark will be heard in the daylight, and what you have whispered in the ear in the inner rooms will be proclaimed from the roofs. Unfortunately, that's the Bible. Luke 12, chapter 2 and 3. What is being exposed and reported here in 2018 while happening in secret for decades is an ugly truth about America that is no longer concealed. The United States is the world leader in child sex trafficking, and it is being supported and funded in large part through the taxpayer-funded government programs of child welfare services and foster care. So now the question is, does anybody care? Maybe by reading this article you are being made aware of these horrible abuses for the first time, but the fact that they exist and continue to go on is not a fact that is in dispute anymore. This is not a conspiracy theory, but an ugly American truth that is well documented. Those of us that have been following this topic for years and are now finally seeing some of it exposed in the public arena are appalled when we read a commentary like the one penned by Lisa Wheeler of the National Review telling Christian churches that if they want to be truly pro-life, they need to participate in the government-funded foster care system. Child sex trafficking is a lucrative business, and it needs the federal and state funding that child social services and the foster care system brings in to allow it to operate. Even if you yourself have good motives and do not directly facilitate child sex trafficking, you are part of the system if you receive government funding by participating in it, and it is unreasonable to think that anything can be done to change the system if one is actively participating in it. If Americans truly want to make America great, then we are going to have to destroy the U.S. pedophilia networks and stop child sex trafficking, and it won't be easy. Some who've preceded us in exposing these evils have already risked their lives and made the ultimate sacrifice. Yes. That is a compelling article, is it not, folks? Still think Obama was a great president? You can look at the article yourself and check the sources. I already did for you. I just read the whole thing. But if you don't believe me, you can look at it yourself. It's on a place called newspunch.com. But the sources are extremely well cited. So that option right now is really just for the cynical. The FBI was caught spying on U.S. citizen Aaron Schwartz. And you know what? Probably you too, I imagine. Aaron Schwartz is a genius. Alright? This is a guy who literally designs coding languages, such as a well-known coding language called Markdown 1.0. Right? The government has basically just gone too far. He was apparently criticizing the He was apparently had a number of emails and other things, and they were spying on him, probably looking to blackmail him, or maybe discourage him from criticizing the government and its activities. The FBI spying on our people. Go figure. Patriot Act much? Get yourself a VPN. Try to use the internet less, and when you're out in public, be careful who you talk to. It's a shame we have to live that way, but we do. If you really want your right to privacy to be honored. And now, Dumbocrat Roy Cooper vetoes a bill requiring voters to present ID. And gee, why would he want to do that? Well, it's obvious what the ID system is there to prevent. It's there to prevent illegal immigrants from voting. Because they always vote left, because the leftists and Democrats will support them. And that's how they get additional votes. I guarantee you there's not a Dumbocrat in office today that wasn't supported by an immigrant at some point. So obviously this piece of schlock needs to get fired. Preferably out of a cannon straight to the fucking moon. And Obamacare has been called unconstitutional. Now see, I'm skeptical of the claim of it being not constitutional. Like, what part of the U.S. Constitution says anything about healthcare? A bad system, yes. But unconstitutional? Let me talk to you really quick about how health insurance actually makes healthcare more expensive. Not far from where I live, there is a doctor who only charges $50 for a single visit. But if he took health insurance, then he would be charging $100. And an IV bag in Africa that costs $5 costs $200 to $400 here in the United States. And they're both the same IV bag, they do the same job. So what's with the disparity in the prices? Why is it so much more expensive? Because health insurance is by its very nature, it can place arbitrary prices on things, rather than let the physicians themselves place their own prices. Now, I'm not sure why that would be, I just know that that's how it is. I've read many an article, I've seen many a thing, but I still don't know why. I don't think really any of us know, honestly, why. One can assume that it's just a tax scheme, that it's just a Ponzi scheme to make the political class more rich. And who knows, maybe that's true. But all I know is medical insurance in general is just a bad idea. Anyway, that's it for the Unglobalist today, folks. I'm out!